Hello everyone, welcome to Kalam's answer writing session for the day. So today I've picked up a question on internal security. This is more or less a static question, and this has been picked up from the previous year question paper, probably around 2017 or 2018. I think it was in 2017, from GS3 of course, under the subtopic of internal security. So the question I'll read that out for you all. But before we do that, whenever we write an internal security based question, what are the subheadings that we usually evolve? I mean, what are the prerequisites that we keep in mind? The first and foremost thing is the usage of diagram, especially when they talk about northeast and internal security situation. You could always draw a diagram and identify the different borders and identify the different problems in each of these areas. Like for example, in Nagaland, you have the movement for Nagalim, and in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh, we also had insurgent movements for quite some time. They also can be identified. So the first thing is to put up a diagram, and the second thing to keep in mind when we use an internal security based question is the usage of committee reports, especially when you talk about northeast. There was a committee report which tried to integrate northeastern people into the mainstream India. It was probably Best Barua committee and so on. So there are several other schemes that are there in order to improve the situation in northeast region. That could be your third prerequisite. Like for example, we are trying to improve the horticulture situation in the northeast in a significant manner. In addition to this, we have a separate ministry called the Ministry of Donor, or the northeastern region based ministry, that can also be brought into your answer in order to enrich your answer. And there are several schemes. Those schemes can also be mentioned. So these are the prerequisites that you have to keep in mind when you write a insurgency based question, especially on northeast. Now I'll read out the question for you all. The question is the following: the northeastern region of India has been infested with insurgency for a long time. Analyze the major reasons for the survival of armed insurgency in this region. So the question is fairly simple in that it is easy to evolve the subheadings. First is to show how the northeastern region has had insurgency for quite some time. You just have to establish it briefly that there was insurgency. There are so and so insurgent organizations in almost all the 7 sister states, and also if you take Sikkim into account, there is some kind of militancy in this region. You have to establish this. But that is not the crux of the question. The crux of the question is to analyze the reasons for the survival of insurgency. Why is it that despite the facts of the government of India for over a period of 6 decades, we still have not been able to eliminate insurgency? There should be some reasons behind that. Those are the reasons which you are supposed to list out. You are supposed to list out with some explanation that is going to form the crux of your answer. Having done that, you can't just stop there. You are supposed to move forward and talk about the solutions to handle the situation. You have clearly identified the problems. You have clearly identified the reasons why the northeastern region is festering with this insurgent situation. Now you move forward and identify the solutions. That is how you write a balanced answer. So these are the basic subheadings that we can evolve under the body of my answer. The first is to talk about the reasons for the survival of insurgency. That will be the first side heading. And the second is to talk about the solutions to handle this insurgency. To top it off, you have to establish that fact that there has been insurgency for quite some time, probably by identifying some of the insurgent organizations. Either you could draw a map and identify the insurgent organizations in the respective states, but this could probably take a lot of time because you have to identify the political borders and you have to show insurgent organizations in each of these states. So that is not practical. Instead of that, you just talk about the organizations that are there and how they are carrying out they have been carrying out their activities for quite some time. So that should be a decent body of our answer. This is a 10 marker. How do you introduce your answer? You could introduce your answer just by telling them that this region of northeast has always found itself to be alienated from the mainstream India, and to top it off, we have had a very rife and strife insurgent situation, and then you move forward. Otherwise, you talk about the different facts that are there. Like for example, the government has tried to try to establish some agreement between the insurgent organizations so that these people would leave their arms. Despite these talks, there is always breakdown of talks because of the insurgent situation. That is a two-line introduction that you can keep, and then you immediately move forward to the body of your answer. So that should be the introduction, body, and conclusion format of this answer. Having evolved this structure, what do? We move forward and we will see how this person has written his answer. So this is how this person starts his answer. He tries to establish the fact that he knows northeastern region. He's trying to mention the fact there are 7 sister states: Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Nagaland, etc. He mentioned 4 of them, and then he moved on by saying etc. This region has been very volatile for quite some time. This is a very simplistic introduction. The only thing that I'm learning from this introduction is that he knows the states in the northeastern region, which is good enough. Now he is immediately moving forward. As far as I can see, I don't see a diagram. A diagram would have been better, but I think in order to meet the needs of a 7-minute answer, he probably left out the diagram, and he is trying to explain the same thing in different ways. He's talking about the insurgencies that were there. He should have mentioned insurgencies since independence. That would have been in tune with the nature of the question, because the question says that there have been insurgencies for quite some time. So what are the insurgencies? These insurgencies are both militant and violent, and then he has identified some of them: NSCN, Isak, Movia, and Kaplang in Nagaland, and then you have Ulfa, United Liberation Front, etc., and then you have Bodo Security Force in Assam, and then Ulva in Arunachal Pradesh. Similarly, if you go back and look at the different kind of insurgencies in the different parts of Northeast, even in Tripura, Mizoram, Manipur, etc., we also had some or the other insurgent organization. He mentioned some of them. He's trying to give solid facts to make us understand that there are insurgent organizations here. So far so good. Now he moves forward and it tells us that there are certain reasons for the survival of armed insurgency. The first is the fact that these people lack connect with mainstream India. They feel alienated because of different cultural norms. They have strong cultural ties and cultural norms which are quite different from mainstream India. They are unique in themselves, so they feel different from the main country. So because they feel different from the main country, it has pushed them towards militancy. They want independence, they want to succeed, and so on. In addition to this, there have been peace agreements. But these peace agreements have broken down quite time and again. And also there are so many organizations, so many insurgent organizations there. Even if the government establishes an agreement with one of these organizations, the other organizations don't let that organization to take forward the agreement. So there are so many internal politics in those areas, so the talks of the government basically break down. In addition to this, what do we know about Northeast? What is peculiar about Northeast? It is the terrain. It is the border that these people have. These borders allow them to move from one place to another place. So these terrorists have their bases in the neighboring countries like Bangladesh and Myanmar, and sometimes in Bhutan and so on, in some areas of Bhutan, if I remember right. In addition to this, if you impose AFSPA, if you keep imposing AFSPA, there is going to be a breakdown of the democratic structure. In fact, there have been several incidents which are uncalled for. There are issues where there are allegations of human right violations, rapes, etc., on the army and so on, which is why the Supreme Court in some time ago also said that AFSPA doesn't provide any kind of legal immunity. This is basically a judgment of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said every person has to go through the same process of law, even if the AFSPA is in place, in order to handle the human right violations. So anyway, this is also another reason for the survival of armed insurgency. Now he moves forward. He says the terrain is difficult. If there is a difficult terrain, who will have the natural advantage? The people in that area will have the natural advantage, and because of this, coupled with guerrilla warfare, it is going to be really difficult for the army to handle the situation. Now he moves forward and gives us another reason. We have already established how these people are culturally strong, and they have strong kinship and cultural ties. They have strong ethnic ties. There are so many ethnic tribes over there. So these local people provide some support to the insurgent organizations because of the kinship ties they have. They have no choice. So that is another issue. In addition to this, lack of mainstream development. Development in the northeast itself is poor. There has been insurgent situation for quite some time, because of which we don't have economic development in that region, because capital doesn't go into those areas where there is an insurgent situation. So the development in that area is basically low. Because the development is low, the insurgent situation becomes higher and higher. So this is a situation of what do we call this? We call it as a vicious cycle. And because of this, the region is moving further towards militancy. In addition to this, there is backing of foreign powers, like for example China supports certain organizations, and in fact he has given the example of Pakistan and how it has been supporting this insurgent agency called Ulfa in Bangladesh. These people have bases both in Bangladesh and in neighbors and India. So some of the Ulfa members are in Bangladesh, and these people are being provided support by who? Pakistan. And then there is a presence of arms and narcotics trade. There is a breakdown of law and order along the borders, because of which narcotics trade, opium trade, etc. happens. And when this kind of trade happens, there is going to be a situation of black money. This black money or the black wealth that is generated is basically funding the arms and ammunition of these northeastern insurgent organizations. So basically he has given me 9 points, that is too many points, under the subheading as to why the insurgent situation in the northeast is quite rife. Now he moves forward and he tries to identify the way forward. Let's see what he does. First, you have to handle the human rights situation. In order to do that, you have to follow the Supreme Court order. The Supreme Court order said there will be a check, there will be a fast track resolution of cases for each of the 1152 allegations of human right violations in Manipur, just in Manipur, and in all those other areas where there are human right violations, they have to be fast tracked and they have to be solved, and the perpetrator, if found to be guilty, has to be punished. Next, there has to be some kind of cultural integration. Northeast is unique in itself, and India is basically a land of plurality. So you have to integrate Indian land with the northeastern region, and the way to do it is through schemes like Ek Bharat and Shresth Bharat. There are certain cooperations in Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat, like there is state connect, there is district connect. I want you all to talk about it a bit in the comment section for the benefit of everybody. In addition to this, if you want to handle the trade of narcotics and ammunition, the first thing you need to do is to manage your borders better. You have to remove all the underground tunnels that are there. First thing, you have to man all the shifting borders, riverine borders, etc. Night patrolling has to be there, and so on. In addition to this, you have to cooperate with the neighbors like Bangladesh. This has been done for some time. Like for example, Royal Bhutanese Army, I think, has helped India to handle the insurgent situation in Arunachal Pradesh and Assam some time ago. Similarly, Bangladesh has also pledged, but you have to step up this cooperation in order to handle the situation better. In addition to this, you have to give a democratic vent to this anger. You can't keep suppressing the people in the northeast just because they have taken up to rifles and so on. In the extreme situation, there is always going to be an altercation and there will be loss of life of the insurgents and the military and so on. But then, as much as possible, you have to look for a peaceful solution, and the way to do it is to provide a democratic vent for these people. You need to provide political representation, you need to provide autonomy and so on. There are so many district councils, regional councils, etc. in northeast, because they come under the 6th schedule, but the functioning is not good. You have to empower them. Once you empower them, they will automatically distance themselves from the situation of insurgency. So that is an important point. I think he has written a good number of points here. He didn't mention Best Barua Committee. Okay, he did mention Best Barua Committee recommendations. Best Barua Committee recommendations are basically related to integration of Northeast into the mainstream society. Like for example, we had the case of Nido Tanyam in Delhi and so on. These people were killed. These northeasterners were basically discriminated and they were killed. So in that situation, what this committee said was, we have to follow certain norms, especially in policing. There has to be representation of northeasterners, there has to be representation of northeastern women, there has to be awareness and a structured form of awareness. All these recommendations were given by this Best Barua committee. So that is a good conclusion, but the conclusion says that you have to follow Best Barua committee recommendations to further further mainstream Northeast India into India. Instead of using that, he should have mentioned how this would help decrease the insurgent situation in Northeast overall. If Besbara is not relevant in the conclusion, don't write it. Just don't make your answer too dense by dumping facts. Find the logical flow, and you'll be able to do well. The answer is a content dense answer. There are too many points under each of the subheadings, and especially his analysis on why the northeastern insurgency is quite high is basically sound. So the answer is above average. In fact, it is a good answer. So that should be my review for the day. I'll see you all tomorrow with another answer. Thank you for your time. Bye.